All right, welcome. It's 5:30 p.m. and I will call to order the June 13, 2016 meeting of the MISD Board of Trustees. If you will please first join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag over there. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thanks everyone for coming. I hope you're having a great start of the summer. Thanks for being with us this evening. The second item on the agenda is public forum, and we do have someone signed up. Julia Swallow, if you'll please come forward. I understand you like to address the board on laying the foundation, which is on our consent agenda as item 4D. 4D, and that's on the information on page 170 of our board packet. Julia?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Julia Swallow, and I currently serve as president of Gifted and Talented Parents Association. Laying the Foundation is a teacher education program that has been a priority of ours for quite some time. And we would like to thank Judy Bridges for doing the legwork on it and encourage each one of you to vote in favor of it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hopefully we'll get to that in just a minute. All right.
That's the least amount of time I've ever heard you talk before. So.
Yes. What is a consent agenda item, you know? All right.
Well done. Very well done. Thank you.
All right. We will, if you'll indulge me, we will skip to the action item 5E, discussion and possible approval of personnel appointments. And Dr. Warren, would you recognize the person?
Team, I asked Mr. Davis to skip to our action item. These are our normal action items, recommendations for professional contracts that I'm going to recommend to you. Let me just point out two names on the list. Under secondary appointments, we have Ms. Jennifer Seibert. Jennifer, if you will remember, was our building principal a couple of years ago at Washington Magnet. She went off and started the UTPB the charter school program, and Jennifer applied for and rose up through the committee process and with me and we're recommending her as the next building principal for Abel Junior High School. So we're very proud of Jennifer. Jennifer could not be with us tonight, but I thought you pretty much knew her. I would like the next lady to come to the speaker stand, Stephanie Ramos. Stephanie, come up, please. Board, I would like to introduce you to Stephanie Ramos. We are very proud. Stephanie is currently an assistant principal. Probably just wrapped up her time in Manor, Texas, Manor ISD. Stephanie did the same thing for us. She rose very quickly through the applicant pool, through the committee process, and then with me. And we are very proud that Stephanie, our recommendation will be to be the next building principal of Bush Elementary School. So Stephanie, thank you for being here and welcome to Midland.
Welcome.
Do you have some of your crew to introduce tonight?
I do. My husband's in the very back, AP Ramos.
AP, good to see you.
Holding our youngest, Maverick. He's a year and a half. And then my middle little girl is right there. Her name is Emerson, and she'll be in kindergarten this year at Bush with me. And then we also have a 10-year-old who'll be in 5th grade that we're hoping to have at Bush also.
Great.
Very good.
All right, well, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Welcome to your entire family. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
So, Board, I would recommend approval, all subject to assignment.
Motion by Mr. Isaacs. Second by Ms. Nicholson. Any questions? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you, Board. All right, and why don't we skip to the consent agenda? Item 4A, Quarterly Investment Report. 4B, Minutes of the Regular Board Meeting of May 9, 2016. 4C, Budget Amendments and Transfers. 4D, Competitive Seal Bid Approval. laying the foundation proposal for math and science, and 4E, board gifts. Do we need to pull any of those 5 items for any reason? All right, hearing no request to pull any of the items, they will all be approved by consent.
Judy, thank you for the work. Julia, thank you for the words.
Thank y'all. All right, now we'll get back on track to the agenda in the order in which it's presented on the agenda, I should say. Making it more complicated than I need to. District reports, 3A, Texas school finance ruling.
Team, now you do not need permission to do this, but you can give Mr. Robnett a very hard time the next time you see him, because he was actually the board member who requested the first 2 items on our reports, and he took his vacation this week. So, but team, just for your information, on page 4 is the full 100-page ruling that, as I talked with Cassie, I believe, when it happened, we were very disappointed in. Just wanted to give you that we are encouraged. The last couple of weeks, we are encouraged that one of the big 3 in Austin, Speaker Strauss, has stood up and said that that needs to be a focus. School finance needs to be a focus, especially at least from the House point of view. That he's going to ask his staff and the representatives to study that. So that was good news. So unless anyone has any questions on the ruling itself, the thing that stands out to me is, the ruling was that our system does meet, and the words that the court use, minimum constitutional standards. So doesn't that make you proud to be in a state that meets minimum constitutional standards with our school finance system? So, questions?
I think I think Speaker Strauss is probably going to be one of the few that will actually look at this document and pick out the theme of it, even though they've upheld the theme of this whole document revolves around the inadequacy of the system, both the accountability as well as funding systems. And any legislator that's worth their salt will take that document and do what's right and not play politics. And I'm fearful that we'll be seeing some politics coming out of it.
I believe you're right.
Because they've got sufficient cover, if you will.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the Texas school finance system. Let me take one step back, Mr. President, if you'll allow me. Shannon Torres, come here. Board, you did not hire her tonight because she had already been hired, but I want to, if you do not know Shannon has always done a great job for us. We have named Shannon the new principal of Midland Freshman High School. That's a reassignment for her administratively. It'll be her first principalship, but she absolutely earned it. What she's done for us as an AP and now Dean of Students, just recently Dean of Students at Midland High School, and now in charge. She's already met with the staff. We were able to get her into the school right before probably the second to last day of school.
Last week, yes.
The last week of school. She had a great meeting with her teachers at Midland Freshman, so we're very proud and we're very much looking forward to Shannon's career as she begins her new principalship. So I just wanted to recognize her.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Thank you, Shannon.
Congratulations. Thank you. All right,
Okay,
next
wait
is...
a minute. I'm getting 1,800 texts from staff. All right. Amy Clark, come up, please. I believe I have told you, Amanda Magion is leaving us, who is principal of Lamar Elementary, and I believe last month Amy was on our agenda, but I'm very proud to have Amy here. Amy is going to be doing, and she has been in the building. She was able to spend some really good time in the Lamar Elementary before the end of school, correct, Amy?
Yes,
Yep.
I've been there for several
And so
weeks.
I'm very proud to introduce Amy Clark as the new principal of Lamar Elementary. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. Tara, come here. Team, you guys have been, y'all have been prayer warriors for J.R. Silva, and we appreciate y'all having him on your prayer list. J.R. had a tough semester. Tara Crockett, Tara is not at Crockett, her last name is Crockett. Tara, AP at South Elementary School, and did just a phenomenal job filling in for J.R. in the principalship. So much so that during the interview process, she did an amazing job with that and made us believe that she was going to be the new leader of South Elementary School. So Tara, we're very happy that you're here and to introduce you to the board for South Elementary.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, congratulations, Ms. Crockett. Thank you for coming.
Now, Leah, Patrick, Jeff, Jill, anybody else that I have missed? Am I good? Okay. Sorry, guys. All right. Second report items. Again, Jeff had requested this be on there just to let you know the guidance that we have been provided from our federal government and our Lieutenant Governor's office revolving around bathrooms. And hopefully I did a good enough job explaining to our community. Anytime we are given guidance from our governments, whether that be federal guidance or state guidance, we appreciate them taking the time to do so. But we are really not changing very much at all what we've done in Midland ISD because of either one of these letters, whether it be from President Obama or Lieutenant Governor Patrick. We're treating, as I stated in my article and my documentation to you, we have dealt with kids who had privacy issues, who needed a little extra support for years. Our building principals do a fantastic job dealing with differences in kids. We are still going to maintain single-sex bathrooms as we always have to make sure we have the utmost control of our schools and, again, provide that support to kids who need anything else to do that. So I'm very pleased with the way our principals have always dealt with difference issues in children. And unless there's any questions, we're going to continue to do so.
I don't have a question, but I would like to say thank you for always, in all circumstances, treating students with compassion and sensitivity. And this is such a perfect example of handling things on a case-by-case basis. Thank you.
Yep.
I was excited to learn Lieutenant Governor Patrick is opposed to one-size-fit-all directives.
Yes, and he believes in local control.
Yeah, that's good. We want to keep a copy of this letter. All right, 3C, discussion on July 2016 board meeting date. Want everyone to check their calendar to make sure you're available on July 25th for our July board meeting, and if not, let's talk about an alternative date.
Good?
I'm good.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
25th, Monday the 25th. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Tommy, okay? All right, well, let's make it so. July 25th will be our July board meeting date. District Report 3D, list of bills, those begin on page 115 of our board packet. Any questions about any of those? Hearing none, we'll move on to District Report 3E, financials, which begin on page 153 of our board packet. Any questions about those? Mr. Isaacs? None here. Oh, okay, none here. Okay, great. Anyone else? All right, we'll turn to our action items. We've already taken care of one. We'll move to action item 5A, discussion and possible approval of CNS bid on the warehouse. The information begins on page 173 of our packet.
Team, on the subsequent pages from 173, you will have a complete list, those shaded areas, of what Michelle Helms and her crew have researched. They've done an excellent job, so I would recommend approval of those specified bid approvals.
Motion by Mr. Fuller. Second by Mr. Hernandez. Any questions? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, action item 5B, discussion and possible approval of CNS bid for our direct delivery bid, That information begins on page 190 of our board packet.
Team, you have four bids that we received. The Tyson bid was not complete, so we actually looked at three. Ms. Helms is recommending the low bid for Cisco, $1.486 million. I would recommend approval, and that's for direct delivery.
Motion by Mr. Hernandez,
Second.
second by Ms. Nicholson. Any questions? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Action item 5C, discussion and possible approval of 7 turnaround plans. We'll take those up one at a time, I believe. The first one begins on page 196.
Team, first, Elise is going to come up and just give you some introductory information about HB 1842, about the requirement. This is a new requirement from our legislature, and I will tell you, Elise's team, the building principals and their teams have done a phenomenal job constructing these plans. I'm very proud of their efforts. So, Elise, please.
Basically, House Bill 1842 is a wonderful present from our legislative system. And what it does is require that any school that has been identified at least 2 consecutive years as not meeting standard must create a turnaround plan. And they must meet standard within a certain amount of time, depending upon how long they've been in school improvement. We currently have 7 campuses that fall underneath this. And each of the plans have all the same components, but each of the campuses have created the plan to meet their needs. We have had 2 district public meetings that many of you were a part of, and then additionally, each campus held their own parent and stakeholder meetings where they reviewed the plans with parents that came and anyone else that came to those meetings. We also had online surveys available, handwritten surveys, which you have copies of all the results, and we do have to submit those to TEA as well. And then we had a dedicated email address during this time. We've already submitted all these plans to TEA and have received feedback from TEA on those plans, so they've already been adjusted somewhat. Once you discuss and approve the plans tonight, then we will submit those plans to TEA again tomorrow and wait for the commissioner to approve and or send back for additional changes. Once the plans have been developed, if a campus meets standard this coming school year, then you as a board have the option to maintain the plan, modify the plan, or rescind the plan. I can tell you up front that every one of the campus's plans right now are something that they're already planning on doing no matter what happens as far as accountability ratings, because they're very detailed, they're very in line with what they're already doing on the campuses and the progress that they've already made toward those. So what we're going to do at this point is allow the principals to come up and put in common language that makes sense to them, exactly what's going on with the plan, rather than make you go through each of the detailed items of the plan. They're
I
just
just
gonna
have
talk
one
about them.
question.
Yes, sir.
Am I reading this correctly? Those campuses that have formulated plans, these plans will be interfaced with this new turnaround process?
What will happen is the turnaround plans become the broad picture, and the plans that they do for their school improvement that fall underneath, that are called the TAYS plans, their school improvement plans, those will actually be the actions that will happen to make the broad turnaround plan happen.
Okay.
Did that make sense, the way I
Yeah.
said that?
I've got a
Okay.
question for you, Elise.
Yes, sir.
Or Dr. Warren, either one. With House Bill 1842, it just went into effect for this upcoming year, correct?
Yes, sir.
It was
went into
implemented, I guess, in spring with plans to be, the review for this past spring, but plans for implementation in the upcoming school year, correct?
Yes, sir.
So the clock, that 2-year clock actually starts in August or September when school starts. So schools like Crockett, Milam South that have already had improvement required for more than 2 years, they basically get a bye as it relates to 1842. Is that correct?
They don't really get a bye. They have one less year to make it happen.
So they have 1 year, even,
Right.
so
If you-
in
if you-
Crockett's case, it's the
Right.
5th year. Okay, that was
So, yes.
part of where I was going to, so,
Yes, if you look at the transition chart that's in the packet,
yeah, so.
this year's rating
I see.
does apply.
Okay, so Crockett does have that one last year from 2019 to 2020 then?
Yes.
I'm with you.
And any
All right,
campus.
that's the clarification I was looking for. I didn't
Yes.
understand why that was short. So there is a shorter fuse then on those 3 schools, or, yeah, those 3.
Yes.
I guess, Dr. Warren, my question for you, in going through several of these, and I know you're not going to go through all the detail because there's a ton of it in
Right.
there, but collaboration seemed to be the common word
It
throughout
is.
most of that.
Yep.
Is that truly going to be something different on those campuses that will change the course of academic performance?
Jay, yes and no. Number one is, on one hand, I think this is just another level of bureaucracy that the legislature has passed down to us. They're doing it in the name of academic improvement, I understand that. But as Elise stated, you know, the TASE process, the campus improvement plan process, we already had so much plans and action plans set up already that the principal have been doing a really good job on. And again, these turnaround plans, yes, they could be helpful, but our frustration still is, and if you look across the state, TEA now, or the legislature is now thinking that another plan is going to cause a positive effect on STAR test scores, whereas nothing yet has caused a positive.
Right.
Even school districts have not had the internal challenges that we've had. If you look at what they made in 12, they're still making in 15, and they're still, you know, we got word that we'll have to wait a little bit longer for our scores this year than normal. But I'm hoping, yes, we're all hoping we're going to find that thing that's out there that will
The answer.
positively affect STAR scores. It just hasn't happened yet. And I've been very, with Elisa's department and our T&L crew, the level of collaboration I've been very pleased with over the last several years of being able to make sure that the campus teams, working with the central office teams, have been developing really good action plans to address the needs of the campuses.
Well, I guess, and I understand your answer, and this is just from board level observation, maybe we just focus all of our efforts on those 3 schools since we've only got 1 year to make it happen.
Right.
If we can move the needle on those 3 schools, what an awesome story this would
Absolutely.
be for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And the effort on those 3 schools that you're talking about has been phenomenal. It really has. I've been very pleased with the effort. I just hope the tool that we're measured by
Reflects it.
reflects it.
Yeah.
May
Gotcha.
I interject?
Sure.
Sure.
On your question about collaboration, one of the requirements of the plans is that no companies be named or specific programs. Therefore, collaboration for our district is code word for professional learning communities, which is the PLCs.
Gotcha.
That's why you saw that in there a bunch, because
was-
all of these campuses are implementation campuses and have seen remarkable growth within their teachers, and we'll continue to see that. And you'll hear that from the principals.
So we are waiting on the results of the 2, Dr. Warren, the STAR?
We're waiting on 3 through 8, I'm sorry. We are waiting on 3 through 8. We just received word from the commissioner today that we were supposed to get those results tomorrow. We will not receive them until July 5th, when every district in the state of Texas is closed,
Gone.
which means we won't be uploading them into our data systems until July 11th, which means everything else is on a cascading
It's all falling
down.
It's all falling back to the testing vendor, the new testing vendor that we've had challenges with for the entire testing season this year.
Yes, our testing director has definitely gone more gray this year.
Not good.
All right, good questions. All right, Mr. Dominguez. Team, Juan just completed, Juan, is this your second year at Bonham?
Yes, sir.
Juan just completed his second year at Bonham, is doing a great job for us, and he will go over the highlights of the Bonham plan, which for you start on page 200.
And again, my name is Juan Dominguez. This is my second year at Bonham. And as you can see, Bonham is a second-year improvement required school. The first thing that we did with our turnaround plan is we had to go back and we revisited our vision. Excuse me. We went back and revisited our vision because we all needed to make sure that we had a common focus throughout the entire school. Upon doing that, we needed to make sure that everybody understood that the reason we were there was for student progress for all students. Upon doing that, we came up with a new vision, a vision that was meaningful for everybody. And our vision was every student matters, every moment counts. We really wanted everybody to understand that it truly, when we mean all students matter. And the sense of urgency of every moment counts. When we started looking at our root cause of why our students were not being successful, we looked at current data as well as historical data. As a team, we were able to identify that we as a campus were not implementing consistent quality Tier 1 instruction. And by that, I mean that our teachers were not able to identify essential skills, which is basically what all the students need. We didn't have systems for effective collaboration among teachers, and we also needed to go back and look at our protocols for analyzing data and monitoring student progress. Some of the initiatives that we had, that we talked about putting in place to be able to identify our root cause, which was quality Tier 1 instruction, was the implementation of the professional learning communities. We did the first year, and we did really well as far as establishing processes and protocols. Next year, we are going to continue to do our professional learning communities. What we're going to do is we're going to enhance it. And by that, I mean that we are going to be able to sit down together and talk about best practices. We're going to be able to look at data, and we're going to be able to differentiate between intervention and enrichment. Another one of the initiatives that we are going to do to be able to address our Tier 1 instruction is we are going to also add a reading specialist to our campus. And that is an instructional specialist that's going to be working in the area of reading. Their primary focus will be to work with struggling students, excuse me, as well as they're going to be available to work with other teachers for collaboration, model for teachers, and also provide instructional support.
Questions, board?
What difference have you seen in terms of the interaction between student and teachers, given the plan you just articulated?
I'm sorry, will you repeat that one more time?
What differences, if any, have you seen relative to the exchange or interaction between students and teachers, given the plan you just articulated?
Well, when we start talking about collaboration, I think the teachers are able to focus a little bit more on the student and their student needs. There seems to be more of a relationship on my campus. So the students are able to go and successfully work with these teachers. You know, we have different things that put in place for our students to be able to come in. Not only do they come in for enrichment and intervention during their time, but they also do that on their own time. So there's a lot more relationship in that area.
Has it made any difference relative to the parental involvement that I'm sure you look forward to?
Yes, sir. And again, through all the collaboration and everything, we're able to work a lot more with our parents. I mean, our parents are, at Bonham, I can say our parents are constantly asking what they can do to help and support us at school. And so we're able to come work collaborative with them.
When do you find the time for the collaboration?
We built it in during the school day. One of the things that we've historically done is on Wednesdays we have staff meetings. One of the things that we're going to do different next year is we are going to allow that time for teachers to collaborate as well, giving them that time.
Any other questions about the Bonham turnaround plan?
Specific to Bonham, but Dr. Warren, I guess, would there be any intermediate steps that we'd be able to see that these turnaround plans are getting some traction?
Yes, yes.
What might those be? I don't know.
There are constant meetings that go on at the campus levels to monitor. Mr. Jones attends most of those meetings. Patrick?
We have a team from central office that sits in and participates in the TASE sessions. But for next year, the 7 plans, we can put together a schedule where they are reporting the progress on those plans, quarterly reviews, that sort of thing, with you all, if that's
I might suggest it, just again, trying to focus on those 3 campuses. If we had something that we were coming back to the board, if there was some measurement stick, metric, whatever the case might be, would be helpful.
Sure, absolutely. Juan, good job.
What you're really saying is we want something tangible. I just want to see improvement.
To track, yeah, absolutely.
Period.
Letty?
I just didn't want to have to wait till the STAR exam.
Yeah.
Which means a complete year from now.
All right, Burnett.
All right, I'll take it away. My name is Letty Amaya, and I'm the principal of Burnett Elementary. We are currently finishing our 2nd year as an improvement required campus. We have, I'm going to go over the new initiatives that we will be implementing. There are 2 very fundamental things that we have worked on the past 2 years. One is professional learning communities. When I came to this district, I had already been trained on professional learning communities, so I was kind of ahead of the game. So last year I started that at my campus, and this year we, of course, became an implementation campus, so that's something that's already built in our campus. The other thing that we've worked quite a bit on is on Lead Forward. It's just a curriculum system that helps teachers identify the essential standards that our kids are to learn. So with that in mind, the first thing that I like to mention is that we, just like Mr. Dominguez, we went through a root cause analysis for our campus using past data, and we found that our campus implemented Tier 1 instruction that ensure the mastery of academic essential standards necessary for learning success. So that was our root cause. Then we moved on to the initiative that will help us get out of this problem. So with that, we felt that as a leadership team that we needed to adopt and monitor a systematic lesson delivery model. So to explain a little bit about that, there's lesson delivery models that address, how to teach a lesson. That's so far inconsistent at our campus, and so we felt very strongly that we need a delivery model that is uniform throughout the campus. So that's one of our initiatives. The processes and procedures that we will follow are that in order for us to address Tier 1 instruction, teachers have identified, once again, content and grade level specific essential standards to target and adjust instruction. We do have a planning model that we've implemented the last 2 years where teachers meet by grade level every 6 weeks before we start teaching each unit, the 6-week period. We meet and we learn about the curriculum, the assessment, and the instruction that we're going to deliver. Well, we took it a step further, and now we've identified essential standards. What are the things that our kids have to know before they move to the next grade level? That took a long time because we did it in collaborations, all grade levels, vertical, K through 6. And so we have that in place for next year. Also, teachers will monitor student growth by tracking individual student data. We already have that in place, but we're going to refine it even further with identifying those essential standards. And the last different initiative or strategy that we're going to use is we're going to use a systematic approach that will develop learning walks using peer collaboration. So if I'm teaching 5th grade, I can go and do a learning walk based on that delivery model and watch another fifth grade teacher and give feedback in that regard, peer-to-peer, as opposed to, just from the principal. And so that's what we have on our turnaround plan. Do y'all have any questions?
And Jan, Mr. Fuller, let me make one comment also. Lady does a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things you just talked about is about your ability to gauge success on this, growth. I think what you also need to remember, you guys did a really, really good job approving our internal system this last year. And as that evolves into that plan, through us internally, through the work with Educate Texas and Educate Midland, that internal system is going to be that important data. I think is going to be really brought to use. I don't think we can wait for STAR scores every year. I mean, that's what has proven so frustrating. But as we track those and come up with that system of reporting to you from the internal accountability system, I think you're going to see some of the growth that you've been needing to see.
And that's true as to all.
I'm the principal of Crockett. In our root cause analysis, we have concluded that the lack of foundational skills is leading to the lack of ability to transfer knowledge in 3 through 6, specifically on the STAR test. In order to raise that up, we are going to develop a shared sense of leadership with our teachers by creating action teams. We have currently a leadership team, and we will develop the behavior team, the RTI team, which will look at intervention on campus, and a behavior action team. The literacy action team will develop incentives for students to increase their reading ability. RTI will work with teachers who have students that are struggling in their classroom. We also want to look at our current processes to make sure that we are doing the best for our students. Our behavior team will also help teachers with struggling students when it comes to behavior. We will relook at our CHAMPS plan and processes and procedures across our entire campus. We will be allocating time for professional learning communities on campus. We are allocating time during the day by rearranging a schedule for, say, like library time. Instead of teachers taking their kids to library, the librarian will go to our kids with books selected for them. Same thing with our counselor. Our counselor pushes in order to protect that Tier 1 time. Our counselor will go into that classroom during our PLC time, and that way we'll protect teacher time. Teachers can collaborate, and our counselors and our librarians can do their responsibilities during that time. Does that help with the master schedule question? Good. Okay. And during our PLC time, our teachers will be focusing on our essential standards, being able to narrow that down, focus on pacing and current student data at that time. We've also revisited our mission, and I'm very proud of what our teachers have created for our staff and our students, and it is passion for our achievement and growth, pride for myself and my school, and power to achieve our future. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Garcia, have you noticed the fund allocation that's in these? Because there's some significant numbers in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't costed out each one of those. This is the first I've seen of those plans, so I'll go into each one of them individually.
Julie Sims from Days of Ottawa.
Hi, I'm Julie Sims, and this is my first year at Days of Allah. And so some of the things that involved in our plan we've been working on this year, and we're going to continue to expand those into next year. Our root cause is, again, Tier 1 instruction. We're not teaching to the depth and rigor level necessary for our students to be successful. And so we started out with our teachers identifying key standards. So taking from all of the TEKS and what are the most important things that students need to know and be successful at in order to learn. we then are going to move into, we've gone through a process of identifying those in each grade level and content area. And so now we're at the point where we're separating those skills, and we're going to look at them differently, skill-based learning from problem-solving based learning. And our skill-based learning, we are in the process of creating a 30-minute section of our class each day, like in math, where we will teach those skills to mastery. And so for some of our kids that are in the 6th grade, they're going to have to go all the way back and focus on addition and subtraction, but build up until each and every child is proficient and has mastered every skill necessary to do the content. And so during that time where we're building up children's skills that they don't currently have, we'll provide them accommodations for the problem-solving section of the curriculum so that they can participate and be successful in that. And so that's just kind of the way we're going to go back and catch kids up and fill in gaps very systematically. So that's kind of the planning and scheduling part, is that we're looking at systematically filling in gaps and systematically teaching the most important things to the depth and rigor necessary. And so we spent a lot of time this year going back and really looking at our TEKs and building our teachers' capacity to know and understand how those are going to be tested and at what level to teach them at. On our communication and parent involvement piece, we're going to create a brochure, and on that brochure, it's going to have all of the key standards by subject and grade. So there'll be a brochure for each grade level that we'll talk to parents about at open house. And it's on that brochure is going to have the key standards by subject and grade that we've identified as teams together. It's going to have key academic vocabulary for each subject matter and grade. They're going to be essential Tier 2 academic vocabulary words that our kids need to know, that are in the root of the questions on STAR, that are access questions. So if you look at Tier 3 vocabulary, that would be more like your scientific words. But we're going to focus on building our kids from kindergarten or pre-K all the way up through with those educational words. They're just words that we need in order to access learning. So those are going to be identified. And then we're going to identify key behavioral traits, not like I can sit down and be quiet, but more like I'm curious, I have a desire to learn, I am able to research a topic, I'm able to seek out information. But key behavioral traits that we know that research says causes kids to be successful in school, because lots of times our parents don't realize that their kids need those character traits in order to be successful. We need grit and determination. And so we're going to identify those, and we're going to go over all of that with parents during open house and throughout the year. And then sometime in the after October, we're going to schedule, with each teacher will schedule and train their students. We started with student-led conferences, or we started with student conferences where students know their data this year, and we're going to extend that into students sitting down with their parents and going through with their parents where they are academically, where their data says they are, and what they need to do to grow. And then we're going to also be sending home standards-based report cards off of all of those things that we identified in the brochure that are essential learning for each grade level. So parents are going to have the opportunity to know exactly what is expected of their child to know, exactly how to help them, and exactly what we're looking for. And so we're not going to be speaking a different language where we're saying they're behind and they're saying, I think they're fine, but that we'll be able to be on the same page with language when we go into RTI.
Terry, are you up? Board Terry Reimer, Long Elementary.
Good evening. I'm Terry Reimer, and this is my second full year that I've just completed at Jane Long, and we have been in the improvement required stage. This is our second year with that. Throughout the 2 years that I've been there, we've been evaluating the things that we've been doing and looking for ways to improve it. No one could ever say that the teachers at Jane Long don't work hard. What we're really doing is trying to work smart and work hard on the right things. One of the first things we established was a leadership team, as well as many of the other schools here. And this team compiles of the people one from each grade level on my campus, and the counselor and an interventionist. And those people are a part of when we have these TAES conversations and we look at campus data. We also look specifically at grade level data, and they help make the decisions, and they were an important part of creating this turnaround plan. When we did our root cause, very similar to what you've heard from the other campuses, we decided that it was also our tier 1 that was really kind of the piece that we needed to focus on. We had some intervention going, but that's kind of like catching them after they already had the gaps. Tier 1 is ensuring that the gaps don't occur, or you're addressing the gaps from closing and you're making progress. And so that's kind of where we've been turning our focus to. One of the things that we also had this year was PLC. Our teachers had a schedule built in where for 45 minutes they have a conversation with each other on the grade level. Those conversations have directed agendas where they talk about what do we want kids to know, how do we know if they know it, what do they do if they do know it, and what do we do if they don't know it. And so those have been kind of the focuses for those conversations. We've decided to be more specific and have protocols so the teachers know exactly how to guide those conversations and then how to look at their data in those directions. One of the things that we also realized is 45 minutes goes really fast when you have a lot to talk about. And so the teachers keep talking about, well, we need to plan and we need to have this time. And so one of the things that we're allocating is once a 6 weeks to have a planning session for the grade level to really look at those essential standards that you hear the other principals talking about. When they look at those essential standards, they're going to be looking at the pacing. Some standards go very quickly. Some standards need a lot more time. Some standards have multiple steps, and to what degree do we need those teachers to understand it? Are they looking at pictorials? Are they looking at manipulatives? Are they looking at and working on the abstract level? These are all things that teachers need to understand about their curriculum that they're teaching. It's not just about teaching fractions or about teaching this standard. It's very complex, and I think that's not what we've been doing. We've been kind of going through quickly planning and then trying to spend lots of time on the execution. But the planning piece is really an important piece, and that's our commitment this coming year, is to really put a huge emphasis in that. We've also spent a lot of time looking at data at Jane Long. And one of the things that we've realized is we look at data as the after result. These are the number of kids that got it. These are the number of kids that didn't. One of the things in our planning is we want to use data as being proactive. How have we done in the future and in the past? Kind of what are our trends? How did these kids do last year with the same kind of data? So we're kind of looking at the strengths of our kids and the strengths of our teachers before we start going into the planning process. One of the things that we've also made a commitment to is learning from each other. We're wanting to really train each other. We have some strengths on our campus, teachers that can be good examples for guided reading, teachers that are strong with the data, how to analyze that. So we're going to maximize the resources on our campus and start making strong level teachers all the way through, kind of make some depth with our master teachers. And we have a lot of teachers on our campus with very little experience, so we're trying to bring them up and kind of get them where they need to be in the level of mastery as far as a teacher. When they're planning, they're writing common formative assessments, and that's how they assess the kids, and that's an important piece that'll also be addressed in the planning. One of the things that we've also decided is that we spend a lot of time talking to kids about data. Our kids all have data folders. They could come, if you were to visit my campus, you could ask any student on our campus, how are they doing and what are their goals? That's a great thing that's happened. We've seen a lot of progress with that. But one of the things when we evaluated what we were doing well and what we could do better is we've decided that our parents don't have the access to this information. Most of the time we just send report cards home, and then we're expecting them to kind of know that, you know, how many times the kids had for opportunities for reteaching and things like that. And we've had a lot of parent involvement activities, and we have a good turnout for that. But it's usually more fun type of stuff. And so our focus for this coming school year is to have informative parent involvement. So if we're having a math night, we're going to start in the classrooms first so that the parents can be involved. These are the essential things that we need to do this semester in first grade math. Here's how it's going to look for your kids. And then even being able to have some data folders for people to look at individually. We're going to make a priority to have student conferences with our parents. Some of our parents trying to be flexible in our scheduling, having teachers stay after school, maybe even having evening conferences to accommodate work schedules. We've decided we're doing such a good job with our data, we want to involve our parents with that process. So we have a lot of good things going on, and we've got this plan as far as making instruction and the planning the main priority, and then building our own, and then involving our parents. Do you have any questions? I could talk a long time about our school, but we've got to move on. So, thank you.
Dr. Warren, I see, as I read over this stuff during the course of the week, and I'm listening for it here, we have this recurring theme of Tier 1 issues.
Right.
Are they doing a comparative assessment based on where these schools were relative to Tier 1 prior to the plan they're presenting now?
Right.
You have a question, Mr. Fuller?
Relative to the Tier 1, I see that as a recurring theme here. Are the principals in concert with the teachers doing a comparative assessment of where the school was relative to Tier 1 as it relates to the plan that they are presenting now?
I think you will see that come out of the internal accountability report once all of those reports are in. And you will see that in respect. Let me give an example of one of those metrics from the internal accountability system. Kids on grade level, reading on grade level, for example. Tier 1 instruction, everything starts with Tier 1 instruction, so I think you will see a lower number of kids needing intervention. So if you have fewer kids needing intervention, that means Tier 1 instruction has improved.
Yeah, James, I think the main point is Tier 1 instruction is we've all realized it has been our biggest challenge for the last several years. And every decision we've made and the decisions you have approved directly affect that Tier 1 in providing our teachers as much support in that. When we made the decision to bring in PLCs, that was a direct reflection that we needed more time to plan with each other to hopefully positively affect Tier 1 instruction. The reason why we brought in Lead Forward was to truly have make sure that teachers understand their data and how to apply that. The reason why we have pushed the teaching model into the classrooms with the efforts of our academic coaches is to positively affect that Tier 1 instruction. So everything that we have done, especially those three very foundational programs that we have in our instructional program, is directly reflected in that. And I agree with Patrick. The progress that you will see through that internal accountability system, I think, will directly affect or directly show you that we are making progress on that Tier 1 instruction. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
So one way to improve Tier 1 instruction through professional learning communities, you bring all fourth grade teachers in together at one particular campus. You review the TEAC for the TEACs or standards for that particular unit. You all decide on how to interpret that particular unit and how it's going to, and what are the best instructional strategies to approach that unit with your kids. And that's how you create a guaranteed and viable curriculum across all grade levels, instead of teachers doing their own thing in independent islands within their classrooms. And then that's how you improve Tier 1 instruction.
Okay. Thank you.
Milo. So my name's Ileana Bermia. I just completed my first full year of being principal at Milam Elementary, and as you know, this is the third year that Milam is designated the IR designation. And so we did a lot of what a lot of other schools did, and we started with the historical data and combined it with our current data that we had this year. And so just analyzing the data that we had, we determined that the lack of academic success was due to our quality Tier 1 instruction. And I say quality because Tier 1 instruction could be looked at through different angles. We have the lesson planning, the delivery, and just being able to have a laser-like focus on the essential things that we need to in order to have Tier 1 be successful for our students. And so we found as a campus that we lack the ability to analyze and prioritize the essential skills that build the solid foundation in that Tier 1 instruction. And so basically just going off of our root cause analysis, we determined that we wanted to have some goals. And the first goal is that, our main goal is to enhance our Tier 1 instruction. And so in order to enhance our Tier 1 instruction, we had to, one of the goals is to identify and prioritize our essential skills that the students must know in their grade level in order to be successful. And that is something that we've actually invested a lot of time during the month of May. We had 14 half-day planning sessions during the month of May in which all kinder through 6th grade teachers had a half-day planning session for reading and then had a half-day planning session for kinder. And then we also extended it to our 3rd through 5th grade classrooms for our science. And so basically all we're doing is we wanted to identify what are those essential skills that we're going to focus on. We're going to teach all of the skills, but which ones we're going to really have laser-like focus for the essential skills. And so we took the year at a glance that the district has already developed for the next school year, and we embedded our common formative assessments into the year at a glance with identifying our priority essential skills. And so we just basically, we have a document where it has for every unit what are essential skills that we're going to hit there, and then how are we going to embed our common formative assessments that are created by the teachers, and then how is it going to compare with the assessment that is provided by the district. The other goal that we have is establishing systems that support effective teacher collaboration and facilitate job-embedded support. So basically this is where our PLCs come in place. We want to make sure that we have a culture of learning for not only our students, but for our teachers as well. And we want to make sure that we're sharing ideas where we can learn from each other, but focusing on those 4 essential questions that Terry had mentioned with, what is it that we want our students to know? How do we know that they've mastered it? And then how does the intervention tie into place, and how does the enrichment tie into place? Our third goal is to just establish a systematic process to analyze the data as teams in order to identify the strengths and weaknesses of our students to develop targeted instruction that will meet their individualized needs. Part of our YAG, our year at a glance, that we also embedded not only our common formative assessments that the teachers will be developing the next year, we also identify when we're going to have our data days. And so in the past, what we've done is that teachers analyze their data, and then we come together and we discuss the data and the findings. But what we want to establish, we want to make sure that everyone has commonality when we're analyzing the data, and that we have the same language whenever we're developing. And so the protocols that we're setting in place, we're going to analyze it together. So in order to accomplish these goals, we have to have our initiatives. And so our first big initiative is our professional learning communities. That's something that we started this year as an implementation school. We revisited a lot of things that we try to set in place. And so we feel that if we continue to focus on our professional learning communities as our overarching initiative, then it's going to already cover 6 of the 7 critical success factors that have been identified by TEA. Within those structures of the PLC, we're going to focus on student learning, formative assessments, enrichment, and intervention. One of the processes that we have changed for the following year, this year, we have 3rd through 6th grade teachers that are departmentalized. And so one teacher teaches reading, one teacher teaches math, one teacher teaches our science. And so when they were coming together to discuss student learning, they didn't discuss the same standards because they weren't teaching the same things. And so one of the things that we tried to do this year is we partnered up with sister schools, and that way we had the same 3rd grade teachers that are teaching the same content could come together and have the same planning. It worked for a while, but then we had to kind of step back and just to see how we could even tweak what we were doing to make it even better. And so that was our initiative number 2. Initiative number 2 was just basically challenging the teachers to come up with an idea that they felt that was going to truly support the professional learning communities. And what the teachers came up with was phenomenal. I think that it is an approach that is outside of the box thinking. It's not our traditional going back to self-contained where the teachers have to teach every single content area, learn all the standards for every content areas. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to do vertical teaming. And with our vertical teaming, we're going to align our 3rd through 6th grade teachers. We're going to have partner teachers 3rd and 4th grade, and then 5th and 6th grade teachers. And what that's going to look like is, let's say a 3rd grade teacher, reading teacher, she's going to teach one class of 3rd grade reading and one class of 4th grade reading, so that now she's no longer having to understand and learn the standards for reading, for social studies, for math, for science. Instead, she's going to focus on one content area and learn the standards vertically, so that they're becoming true master content teachers. And then finally, the third big initiative that we have is that we've decided to hire 2 campus-based instructional specialists that are going to focus in the area of reading and math. And so they're going to provide support not only to the students working in small groups, but also to the teachers by coaching with them, planning with them, and then just having those viable discussions that they need to have in order to make sure that we're still focused on our essential skills and tracking those essential skills throughout the school year. So those are our 3 big initiatives. Any questions?
You said the second initiative worked for a while, and what was your alternative or next step, given the fact that it worked for a while? What do you mean it worked for a while?
Well,
what were the shortcomings?
Well, what we did this year, whenever we were doing our professional learning communities, we wanted teachers that taught the same content in the same grade levels to be able to have discussions. But because our teams are departmentalized, they weren't able to have those discussions. If they didn't have anyone in the campus that had the same content area and the same grade level. So we partnered up with different schools. But when we partnered up with the different schools, our demographics were very different. The historical data was very different, and so we felt like we were talking about 2 very different components. And so in order to establish a structure that was going to continue to support the PLCs, because we feel that it's very critical for our success, we decided to do it in-house. And in order to do it in-house, they're going to do the vertical teaming. So now we're going to have on campus 4 different teachers that are teaching 3rd grade reading and 4 teachers that are teaching 4th grade math, so that when they come together, they have partners to discuss the same content.
How have you informed the parents of this process?
We had we had surveys that parents were able to provide any support, but we also had a community meeting on campus, and what we did for the community meetings is we had grade levels present to the parents, and so the teachers were actually the ones that were presenting the plan to the parents, and they were in smaller settings. We didn't want to do a whole group setting because we felt that the parents were going to be a little bit more relaxed and able to open up more if they had any questions or needed any clarification. And so at that time, we presented our plan to the parents in the different grade level groups.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you.
Okay, Tara, South Elementary.
Good evening, Board, Dr. Warren, and Ms. Robertson. I am Tara Crockett, and will be leading South Elementary next year. As our systematic root cause is similar to everybody else's that you've been hearing, it's Tier 1 instruction. And our leadership got together and went over historical data as well as current data to find out that our teacher quality training needed help with Tier 1 instruction. So that's our main focus, is to really focus on the teacher quality of training. And through that, we've got 5 initiatives that we would like to do. And we will ensure that this happens by maximizing our teacher quality training by improving Tier 1 instruction to increase student engagement and academic growth on a consistent basis. This goes back to our PLCs, like everyone else has talked about. We were an implementation campus this year on PLCs, and we found that our common vocabulary has not been the same across vertically, and so we met vertically as a PLC as well as horizontal as a grade level, and so that will be something we will focus on, is a common vocabulary through our Tier 1 instruction. And to enhance this, we're also going to include a flexible master schedule that will allocate time during the day for teachers to be able to teach maybe reading a little bit longer, but yet still make sure everything else gets taught. And this also goes back to identifying our priority TEKS and our essential standard skills that need to be taught that year, especially your must-knows. And in order to facilitate that, we will add a curriculum instructional specialist to South as one of our 3 specialists we want to add. That is one, and we're going to add a reading specialist that will focus on our upper grades 3 through 6, and then we're going to add a math specialist as well that will focus on K through 5. So we will get our focus on math and reading. We already currently have a K2 specialist at South, and then now we'll add the 3-6 so that they can really focus on the standards that need to be focused on to pass for STAR and to help with Tier 1 instruction. And to help facilitate with that, our PLCs will continue. We will continue with Lead Forward. We will have instructional rounds. And this is for everyone to learn together, just like with doctors and interns, we learn together. And our instructional specialist, the curriculum specialist, will be in charge of kind of helping the teachers go through the instructional rounds on a non-threatening basis so that they know that they're coming together to learn together and they're not being appraised or watched or gotcha. You know, so that person is a teacher
Really
just like
see
them, and
what
what
do they
need help with, where their weaknesses are, or as another principal said, you know, maybe this teacher needs to go see a guided reading lesson in this grade level, so that curriculum specialist will go with that teacher and do an instructional round and then debrief afterwards and talk about, hey, what did you see? What did you like? What do you think you can take back to your classroom? And then build that relationship together so that that specialist can help the teacher embed what needs to be happening in the classroom in Tier 1 instruction from what they've seen from our master teachers on our campus. Because we have a lot of resources right there on our campus, and we need to use them to the full maximum, which is each other. And my teachers really felt that they wanted more support for Tier 1, and they wanted that to happen through embedded teacher training on the campus. And so by having an instructional specialist, that person can go to the district trainings as well as anything else, and I can bring them back, and that one person can help the Tier 1 instruction by embedding on-the-job training as well as doing stuff after school with PLCs and vertical teams as well. Any questions?
Any questions?
This is not for you, this is for us. I've heard a lot of mention of adding specialists. How hard is it going to be to find these specialists and hire them and get them there?
That has been a challenge for Patrick. You almost jumped out of your seat, so go ahead.
The salaries that are shown in here that I was talking about for David, they'll get them.
That is going to be tough, and several of the schools have already found specialists, and we've changed the title of that to instructional specialist so that we could have flexibility. Each campus has a specific need, a unique need, and this gives them the flexibility to meet their individual needs assessment based on what their campus needs are. This gives them the flexibility to not only work with adults, but to also work with kids, and when those times are needed. They are searching, and some of those individuals are coming from within, some are coming from outside the district. We are using the district set aside through federal funds, Title I funds, to fund these positions at our turnaround campuses. This will not be coming from local funds.
Very good. Team, before I give you my recommendation, I just want you to meet 2 more members of the team who've done an awesome job with these plans. Debbie, Susan, would you come up, please? Yes, ma'am. Come on. Don't shake your head at me. Team Debbie Henderson. Debbie Henderson and Susan Calvin. On the title sheets of each plan, you'll see the principal listed and our team member, but then you'll notice a PSP, a professional service provider. These are mandated by the state that we have these, but I really do think we have two of the best. They have really become a part of our teams, and they provide that external support, that expert support. Debbie and Susan both are absolutely steeped in the improvement plans, the TASE processes, and now the turnaround processes. So we really do appreciate their efforts in working with all of our teams and doing that. Ladies, any comments on the activities that you've been? Any comments on the plans that you've been involved in?
I'm excited to see what's going to happen because each plan is a little bit different. It really meets the need of each individual campus, and the leadership teams have worked so hard to think about being proactive about what needs to happen for next year. And I'm very excited to see them put in place and see what happens next year.
Good.
There's some challenges. You can't sugarcoat this. There are some challenges. And many of them are embedded in that tier 1. But the principals and the leadership teams, the teachers have all stepped up to the plate and are ready for it, are willing to do whatever it takes. And I think this is the opportunity that the state has given these campuses to do what we need to do. We have 2 years. We know we have 2 years. The sense of urgency is great, but we can do this. And they know we can do this. I'm excited to see what happens. It's going to be good.
Ladies, thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your help.
Thanks.
Team, I would recommend you approve the 7 turnaround campus plans, the 7 turnaround plans for the 2016-2017 school year.
I so move.
Motion by Ms. Nicholson, second by Mr. Isaacs. Any other questions?
I noticed on this plan, that little statement in the box, where you check the box, sure does put us on the spot.
Yes, it does. And it should.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but just a comment. While there were certainly a strain of similarities in the plans, there were a lot of unique things too, and really impressive ideas. And so thank you for sharing them with us on the verbal level. It always helps, I think.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Outstanding job, principals. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all very much. All right, action item 5D, discussion and possible approval of accelerated instruction waiver. The information begins on page 565 of our board packet.
Team, I'm going to ask you to approve this, and we have no idea whether it's going to be needed or not this year. Since the commissioner's announcement, there will be no third administration of the STAR testing this summer. We do this for the kids who don't meet the mark for the third testing, but we are going to go ahead and ask you to approve it just in case. So I would recommend approval.
So moved.
Jay, this
I mean, it's already been waived, right?
the test has already been canceled, yes.
Right.
This waiver is after each administration of the STAR test, we are mandated to offer accelerated instruction for those kids who are not successful. This waiver allows us to wait, after the third administration, it allows us to wait to the beginning of the new school year to offer that administration. We don't have to come back at the very end of the summer and do it. It allows us to wait until the beginning of the school year for to be able to instruct.
So we're just ratifying what the commissioners had already done.
But right? this might be totally blown out of the water now that there's not going to be a third administration, but we would like you to approve it just in case. Elise did her best. Elise's crew did their best to get a opinion from TEA, and we did not get a call back. Yeah, he's busy.
Motion by Mr. Fuller, second by Mr. Isaacs. Any other questions? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
All right, agenda item number 6, district budget workshop. Mr.
Okay.
Garcia.
Team, on your as Mr. Garcia approaches the bench, on your by your place there are several items of information. Tommy and Jay and Rick, we had a really good meeting as a finance committee a couple of weeks ago. And I want to give the rest of the board members the information and David to talk you through that information. What we tried to do during the committee meeting was to actually take your ideas, Mr. Davis, verbalized some needs of the board, the last board meeting we had, about what he would like to see and what you would like to see us try to work out. And they all revolved around trying to negate the amount, to lessen the amount of cuts that we had presented to you, the $12.3 million of cuts. We looked at trying to save some staffing FTEs and got that down to 8.6. So I want David to go through the packets with you, and then at the end I will give you my recommendation of moving forward. So Mr. Garcia.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Warren, members of the board. You've got 5 documents in your packet in this folder. The first is the per penny analysis based on the $12 million in cuts. And then the second document is the what is the makeup of all those cuts. And then third is the T&L scenarios, 5 scenarios. If there was an additional $4 million provided, instead of going with the full $12.3 million in cuts, going to basically $8.3 million. And then I provided for you a 5-year projection based on the $12.3 million in cuts. And then lastly is the TRE impact per penny from a $100,000 home valuation up to $1 million in home valuation. Before I get started in on the first document in your packet, addressing Mr. Isaac's statement about all the staff that's included in these turnaround plans. Those are predominantly built around the Title I resources that each campus has, as well as any focus and priority money that is also provided through the state Title I set-aside that they provide to school districts that are required to have turnaround plans. So those are the resources. We have not provided any additional resources through the general fund for these programs or these projects. The only effect given for the turnaround campuses is maintaining that they cannot go below a 22-to-1 in grades K through 4. That's a state mandated, and even though we as school districts could ask for a waiver for campuses that are not in those turnaround or in the focus and priority schools, we're going to maintain the current cuts reflect a 22-to-1 staffing ratios K through 4 in those. And there's some step ladders in trying to get to the second tier of cuts that we looked at for the elementary schools. But strictly for those campuses, I believe it was 6 teacher FTEs that were going to be cut, and those are predominantly at the non-improvement required campuses.
State is going to fund all those positions, because those are at executive.
Well, not so much the state funding them, it's just additional resources that are provided to those focus and priority schools, and then the Title I allocations that each campus has as well. So it's really a federal resource that we're utilizing, Title I, in all of those.
But the salaries you're commenting on are listed as 2 years, over 2 years. So
Okay, there's that helps right there. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was seeing 130 and 390,000 in that last case.
An instructional specialist is about $65,000 a year.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. That helped. Thank you.
Okay.
Were you going to ask Nancy to take back her retirement paperwork and sign up for the...
Okay, so if you look at the first set of documents, there's 2 pages, one with the full cuts that Dr. Warren has been to the board several times with different budget scenarios. We originally started with 3 levels of cuts, the least, the mid, and then the most cuts that we felt like we could make at the campuses that were pretty draconian, but there were things that T&L and the administrative team put together in order to try to get to a balanced budget. The first was the least amount of cuts was originally $10 million. The mid-level was about $14 million, and then the worst case scenario was about $18 million. Dr. Warren settled in at $12.3 million as a recommendation that he wanted to provide to the board that we would bring to y'all as our recommendation for cuts to try to balance the budget at some level of tax revenue ability. So if you look at the first page in there, that's kind of down there towards the bottom where I've got the total budget cuts, you see a little kind of reddish pink highlighted number, 12.3 million. That's the recommended cuts that Dr. Warren provided at our last board meeting. As you can see, going from each one of these columns represents a penny on the tax rate, starting at $1.04 and going all the way to $1.17. If you look at the net deficit column there, that's the number in red. At $1.04, with the $12 million in cuts, we still will have $13 million in deficit that we would need to either use fund balance, find additional cuts, or ask for a tax ratification election. And so,
and Mr. Garcia, remind us again what you believe the minimum fund balance should be to be maintained so that we could meet our cash flow needs as a district throughout the course of the year.
What I had projected earlier was last year we were at $51 million, and we had asked for use of $10 million in last year's budget in order to try to balance it out. And so that would have gotten us down to $41 million in fund balance.
So do you believe that 41 is the minimum amount of fund balance we need to meet our cash flow needs throughout the school year?
That would get us dangerously close to borrowing needs, but we did manage that this year.
So you think $41 million is the minimum amount that...
That would be the absolute minimum amount that I would say that we would need to have in order to balance the budget, or go without borrowing resources through September to December, when we don't have a lot of revenue collection, because the bulk of our revenues collected January through February.
Okay.
During the tax collection period. Okay. All right. So as you can see, at $1.04, the deficit being $13 million, the only way we could balance the budget without additional cuts from the $12.3 million is taking our tax rate from $1.04 to $1.17. And so that would be a 13-cent TRE that would need to be passed by the voters of Midland ISD to bring you all a balanced budget in August.
That thought process that Rick just brought up again, and I appreciate the reminder, Rick, we probably could squeeze by at $1.13, it looks like.
Right.
And still maintain that minimum. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Am I reading that right?
Yes, sir.
Maybe at $1.12, but that's just being super tight.
That'd be extremely tight, yes, sir.
And board members, just as a reminder from our Finance Committee meeting, if you look at that $1.17 column, and then about a third from the top, you'll see a line item that's got recapture there. You can see how much of that still goes back to the state. 62 million goes to the state, versus if we stayed at $1.04, it's 51 million. So even if we increase from 192 to 17, so what is that, 25 million? Mm-hmm. The state's still going to get another 11 million out of that total if we go to the max. That's how pathetic this funding program is that the state of Texas has us under.
Picking up on that same point, I mean, it may be too short term in its view, but with the hope that maybe price of oil would increase, values would increase, there is the possibility that you could if you looked at the fund balance minimum of 41 million, that if you looked above $1.13, the pennies above $1.13 could help not cut
into the fund balance, or erode.
No, well, not cut. You wouldn't have to make some of the cuts listed in the cut column, mm-hmm. and instead have those monies come from fund balance to pay for those items. That would be a short-term solution that you wouldn't want. You would only want to make if you believe that the future was going to be brighter. Otherwise, you couldn't afford to continue to make those payments out of fund balance.
That's exactly right. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the only other thing that I would caution if we decide to erode any further into fund balance is the issue of future bond elections. If we were if I had to talk to a rating agency and talk about our fund balance, because we have been very conservative. This school board has done an outstanding job. Y'all need to be commended for maintaining a good, sound fund balance. And one of the questions, particularly last year, that I had to go because we were being warned that we might be put on credit watch if we ate into fund balance. And so I had a pretty lengthy call with both Moody's and Standard & Poor's about the plans that we had trying to build the 16-17 fund balance, and I felt that the board would stand committed to maintaining a good, sound fund balance to protect the school district from any potential financial issues. And so they went, took that into account, and they maintain our AA+ rating. And so that was very strong. If we were to significantly reduce that fund balance amount, I don't think we'll maintain that. And that has long-term ramifications on interest costs that we would pay on any future bond issues that we've got.
All right, so let me ask you, and I realize it's not your opinion, if you will, that would answer this question, but in your opinion, what do you think the minimum fund balance would be required of those folks that would make the decision as to whether we could maintain our AA bond rating going forward?
20% of next year's operating budget, so that would keep you in the $40 million range.
So those two numbers are roughly the same. The answer to your earlier question about cash flow and AA are roughly the same. Okay, thank you.
Conservative there, because we've always been at the 30-35 range.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, the other concern is if we do the TRE, and just worst case scenario, it's not passed, and then we eat another $12-13 million of fund balance, then you've significantly reduced that amount. And so then your bond rating agencies then will put us on credit watch. I have no doubt. So if we do not have a successful TRE, that our credit rating will be put on watch.
All right, so for example, let's take that instance that you just said. Let's say that we're at $1.04, which without a tax rate increase or one being approved, we would have a $13.3 million deficit,
Correct.
even with $12.3 million in cuts.
Yes, sir.
Which would result in the only way, in the absence of either additional cuts, in addition to the $12 million or the tax rate increased revenues, we would have to make up the difference out of fund balance, that $13.3 million,
yes, sir,
which result in an ending fund balance of $30.8 million. Okay. So that's the problem. If, for example, we were to say, okay, well, let's do $1.13, which would increase the tax rate by 9 cents.
Correct.
And we were saying if the voters approve a 9-cent increase to bring the total from $1.04 to $1.13, and we were willing to accept a $3.1 million deficit, even with the $12.3 million in cuts, but we would make up that deficit from fund balance to take us down to $41 million. The risk is if that did not pass, then we would have an actual deficit without additional budget cuts of 13.3 would take the fund balance down to 30.8.
Yes.
Correct?
That is exactly
Okay.
right.
Please continue.
Okay. So now we get back to the scenario that you wanted us to take a look at after our last board meeting, which was to not have any teacher FTE cuts and any academic coach cuts, that we only look at those that are not going to impact direct instruction or those professional development staff members to help support the classroom. And so if we reduce that number to reflect those reduced cuts, the number I've got in red next to the Project Think teachers, to the secondary FTEs, to the elementary FTEs, those are the positions that are not instructional. So Project Think teachers obviously are instructional teachers, so I took those out. The secondary FTEs, the 7.5, the only things I left in there were librarians. Right now, all our secondary schools have a full FTE, a full-time equivalent of one librarian, except for the 2 high schools who have 2 librarians. So the high schools are reduced to 1 full-time equivalent, and all the other secondary schools are reduced to a 0.5 full-time equivalent. And then also 2 additional assistant principals that were provided to Abel and Goddard Junior High School because of their size. So those 2 additional APEs were reduced. So that's the reason you get 5.5 plus the 2 APs is 7.5 that are maintained in the cuts. And then at elementary, we had 1 campus that was over 800, and we provided an additional administrative FTE there as well. And so that's the $85,000 for that position.
Let me make sure I understand what you said. At the last board meeting, I asked that we get to a point, what would the amount of budget cuts be, making all other cuts except for teachers in the classroom?
Right.
And academic coaches.
That is this
teaching
number
up
right.
our
That would be
teachers in
the
the classroom.
$8.6 million in cuts as opposed to $12.3 million.
And your explanation about these additional red parentheses numbers is that
those are non-classroom FTEs.
is that you would still, that included within the secondary FTE and elementary FTE were some non-teaching, non-academic coach positions.
Right.
And so if you stay true to the question, you can still cut 7.5 secondary FTEs and 1 elementary FTE without cutting a teacher in the classroom or an academic coach of those teachers in the classroom.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you still result in some savings on those line items, but not cutting teachers in classrooms or academic coaches.
That is correct.
All right.
So
And
instead
you
of
get to $8.6 million in cuts by doing that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And following Rick's line of reasoning from his previous questions, now, in order to keep the fund balance that would be healthy, we would have to raise it to 1.17.
Absolutely. Because that's your $3.3 million.
That still leaves a deficit. That's why this plan's not going to work. Because
Well,
you still have a deficit even at $1.17, and you're not at the bare bones minimum of 41 million.
But 40.9 is pretty close to 41.
It's close, but you're still deficit at 3.3 million. So
Yeah,
it
but I mean,
doesn't-
if
it
we're
doesn't cover
willing
it.
to take the fund, I think what Karen was saying or what I'm saying, is that
We're saying the same thing.
if we raised it, if we propose a $1.17 tax rate increase, and we're willing to accept a $3.3 million deficit, even then, making up the difference of that 3.3 with taking from fund balance, we would have almost a $41 million fund balance.
Well said. That's exactly what I said.
Yes. And however, as I understand it, as we mentioned on the last plan, is that if you go to that if the TRE rate was not approved, then our worst case scenario, if you will, was that our fund balance would go to 31 million.
Yes, sir. Right. We would, in a matter of 2 years, have taken our fund balance from 54 million to 27 million. Essentially eaten up half of our fund balance.
Yeah, you would go down to 30 million. Okay. And then the worst case scenario on the 8.6 in cuts rather than the 12 point, the non-teacher cuts, if you will, is that if the rate is not approved, then the fund, if you took the difference out of fund balance, you would have to take 17 million rather than 13 million out of fund balance, would take us down to 27 million.
Yes, sir.
In other words, we couldn't do that.
You could do it, but either one are going to put you on credit watch.
Put you on credit watch, and then you'll be borrowing a significant amount of money in the following year, because you'll be borrowing money after you run the first payroll in September in order to meet operational needs and future budgets all the way until you get to January.
You said after the first payroll?
After the first payroll, yes, sir, because our payrolls run about $15 million per payroll. So essentially, you've exhausted that, and whenever you start up school, our startup costs, we typically burn through about 25 to 32 million to start out the year, because everybody's buying their supplies, equipment, and everything, getting ready for the school year. Plus, we make our first payroll on the very first operational day of the school year. That's a provision that Midland ISD has had forever, as you well know. Whenever kids graduate from college, they don't have any money, so we try to give them their first paycheck as early as we possibly can, and that's the first day of the fiscal year.
Well, and I would repeat, from my perspective, we can't do that.
See, the two-edged sword is, we as a board have been very diligent about watching tax rate, and even to a fault, Dr. Warren. We've been very conservative for our community, but based on the state funding program that they've got us, the bucket that we're thrown in, we almost have no choice. And it's almost like we get punished for being conservative and being diligent for the benefit of our taxpayers to the extent that we have anything local. Now it puts our back against the wall, at least, and I guess you'll explain it here in the other pages, at least in year one and maybe year two.
Right.
If we don't have a TRE of at least 13 to 17 cents, we put ourselves in financial jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it weren't, if this whole thing wasn't challenging enough, let me see if I understand it. If you look at the first spreadsheet, if we were to, or both spreadsheets for that matter, if you raise the tax rate to $1.17, you would generate additional revenues of almost $25 million, correct?
Correct.
Because it goes from, currently the projected revenue at $1.04 is $2.10, and if you went to $1.17, it would go to $2.34. So I've left
Mr.
off.
Davis, you might
That's almost
a
25
little
million.
more myopic about it. Just look at the ad valorem tax line item. You go from 192 to 217.
Okay.
That's one that's more specific,
Yeah,
because really there's not much fluctuation.
All
in
right,
the
oh
state
yeah,
revenue.
that is the more, that's the better, more specific. He was being kind to say myopic, yeah. Really, the more accurate way to look at this is the 192 versus 217, which gets you to $25 million in additional revenues. All right. So that's the additional revenues raised. However, when you go down to recapture, our recapture invoice goes up by 11 million. So of the $25 million, the additional $25 million you would raise, 11, we would keep 14/25 of it, but the state would get 11/25 of it, correct?
That's correct. Essentially, through the first 6 pennies, you get taxed at the Austin ISD yield level for recapture. And you notice I say taxed. I'm just saying that for my benefit because of the Supreme Court ruling. Anything over $1.06 is then recaptured at the lower tier 1, 319.5, and so that's where it's penalizing for school districts that are above the above $1.06, and a greater percentage of the tax collections after $1.06 are shared with the state.
In other words, if you the first 2 pennies above $1.04, i.e. $1.05, $1.06, the district essentially keeps 100% of those, of the additional revenues raised by that 1 or 2 cent increase.
Anything above anything above the Austin tier level, yes, sir. So that's the reason you really don't see a difference between $1.04 and $1.06, because we're above the Austin.
But beginning at $1.07 all the way up to $1.17 is where you see that big
penalty,
big
for
cut taken by the state.
Right.
Okay, what additional information do you have for us?
All right, so any other questions on either of those first 2 spreadsheets? The next one I've got for you, if you'll go to, I just kind of wanted to explain to you the staffing. Go to case 2, if you would, please. That's the secondary schools. The elementary's pretty easy to understand because they're pretty much based on the 22-1 and just straight teacher cuts. The case 2 for the secondary schools, and Jeff Horner did a fantastic job of trying to put this together and provide as much detail as he possibly could, so I commend him for that. But looking at what makes up the $2.5 million in cuts for the secondary schools, that's where you have the assistant principal at Abel, the assistant principal at MAP, and then you've got eliminating 2 FTEs for athletic feeder periods. So rather than cutting teachers and reducing or increasing class sizes as a result, that's just doing away with those additional conference periods or feeder periods where a coach is going down to the junior highs and the freshman schools, and one of the varsity coaches is going down to the other secondary schools to supervise the program, going all the way down into the junior high level.
Wait, let me stop you. Just first, let me get my mind around the concept here that's reflected on this page. Is it correct to say that the cuts depicted in case 2 to get you to $2.5 million, that number is the $2.5 million reflected in the $12.3 million number of, quote, recommended cuts, end quote?
Yes, sir.
Boy, is that a misnomer, recommended cuts. But that 2.5 is the details of how you got to the 2.5 number that's reflected in the 12.3 cuts for the secondary FTE cuts.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
And the case 1 is a lesser, only
Yes.
gets you 5.575 for that line item.
That was the best case scenario. When we were looking at the 3 scenarios, looking for best case scenario, the mid-level cuts, and then the worst case scenario.
And case 3 was what was case 3 the truly, I mean, is it the scenario, let's say, for example, if
that's pretty much Jeff's Armageddon case.
we didn't, let's say either, not the first scenario, that we didn't propose a tax rate increase and we were going to absorb it all through cuts, that's the case 3?
Yes, pretty much.
And alternatively, if the TRE is not approved by the voters, then we'd have to look at the case 3 scenario to absorb with budget cuts or fund balance.
And/or fund balance, yes, sir. I'd be looking at, what we've done in other years where we've had these slowdowns, is we've done that through attrition. As the teacher left, we just absorbed that position as the year went along, and so those are things that we would identify and utilize those staff savings in.
So, all right,
yes.
so is there, I interrupted you. and I wasn't listening because I couldn't get my mind around the concept till I got that now straightened out. Were you describing the case 2 detail or the case 1?
Case
When I
2
interrupted
detail.
you? What?
Case 2.
Okay, great. I'm
Because
sorry.
that is what's contained within our $12.3 million in cuts.
All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead then.
Okay. The next cut is the elimination of 2 tennis positions. So it's not doing away with junior high tennis. It's essentially giving those duties back to the high school, the high school tennis coaches, that they would go down into the junior highs and work their tennis programs through their schedule. So that would be some additional savings there. So you're not really losing teaching positions with those. You're just essentially reducing a program and giving it back to the high schools to manage rather than hiring additional staff to do that. The next thing was elimination of the 2 collegiate coaches, and we currently fund the collegiate coaches through the high school allotment, so that are 2 positions that we could utilize the high school allotment for other resources, but that's, right now we have a total of 4 collegiate coaches, and that's reducing that number from 4 to 2. So again, not directly dealing with the classroom or academic coaches. And then, so you see the big number there, the 26 FTEs. That truly is going from a 19-to-1 staffing ratio to a 20.5-to-1 staffing ratio at the secondary schools. So those 26 positions are true 26 teaching positions that we would be looking at reducing in the classroom. And the last 2 items, we opted early on not to eliminate AVID, find it a very valuable program, so we just struck that $80,000 cut out of the proposed list. And then the last thing was eliminating the PSAT test for the 10th grade level. And that was $40,000. So that's how you get to $2.5 million in cuts. So you see out of 39.5 FTEs, there's really only 26 true teaching positions that would be reduced as a result of an increase in class size.
And are the where are the academic coaches? Where are they embedded?
They're on a separate list, and I'll get to that here in just.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we can just address that. I wasn't going to go into detail with that because that's not one of our proposed cuts at this point.
Okay.
If you want to address it, absolutely, I'll answer any questions you've got.
I mean, on one I was looking at, I guess when you had on the 3, you shown eliminating AVID, and you had 0 FTEs, and then you shown 80,000.
Yes.
I was just trying to see where that 80,000 come in with 0.
Well, and that's because in our case 2 scenario, we felt that that AVID is too fundamental a program for our high schools,
Right.
junior highs and high schools to eliminate. So we wanted to keep that. But when you're going to the Armageddon or draconian cuts, however you want to look at it, then yeah, everything's on the table, and AVID was on the table in case 3.
Okay.
Any other questions on this schedule? Okay. Yeah, then we get to the next. Not finding it here, but this is, I don't have it here pulled up on my screen. But the next level, oops, excuse me. The next schedule is the $4 million in the different scenarios that the campus or the teaching and learning department provided for you. If we were to look at priorities, how they would utilize $4 million going from $12.3 million down to the $8.6 million. The status quo, of course, is leaving the not cutting any of those 39.5 FTEs for the secondary schools, the 9 FTEs for the elementary, or any of the 18, which is 15 teaching and learning, 16 teaching and learning academic coaches, and then the 2 technology coaches. So that would leave you with $4.2 million. Status quo, leaving everything the way it is, that would cost $4.2 million. So rather than $12.3 million, you would only have the $8.2 million in cuts.
Now, the scenarios beneath that, in the order, are they ranked in the order of preference?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Correct, Patrick? That is teaching and learning's priority order. And so the second scenario provided cutting 32 secondary FTEs and 14 elementary FTEs, all these teachers only, and then cutting 15 academic coaches. The academic coaches, again, are just the teaching and learning academic coaches, not the technology coaches. Scenario number 2 provides for, we had as part of our, it wasn't really a budget decision, but it was just a consequence of the number of days that we lost in instruction for our paraprofessionals. Because there's 3 less instructional days since we moved from instructional days to instructional minutes. There are 3 less instructional days, so really there's nothing there for teacher assistants and some other support staff to be on duty for. So that savings, by reducing those 3 days for paraprofessionals, was $85,000. The recommendation in scenario number 2 is finding something for those support staff individuals and bringing them back and going ahead and paying them for those 3 days. And that would cost, bring back $85,000 in additional cost. And then the second piece is going from a sliding scale. Right now, we looked at $100 per staff person would save us $3 million. Traditionally, you have always funded our employee benefits, our employee insurance, 100%. So of a total cost of $375 for every employee for the district, now you would only charge $275. Then that would take that. That would generate us $3 million in savings that the employees are essentially paying part of their health insurance costs now. In order to try to pare that back and make it less of a cost to the staff, and particularly paraprofessionals, that would take that $100 from $100 to $10 per month for each one of the support staff, and then $40 for employees, professional employees, I should say. And then secondary would be 20 FTE reductions of $12.5 million, and then bringing back the assistant principals and the academic coaches, only cutting 6, so that'd be 390. So that would get you to $3.9 million.
1.25 million, not
Right.
12.5, right?
Yes, sir.
On the secondary.
And then scenario 4, pretty much running in, all of these are pretty consistent. The $85,000 is still the paraprofessionals, bringing those back. Maintaining the $3 million, essentially not assessing our employees any health insurance costs. And so that would be $3 million that would bring back as a result of doing that. And then reducing the number of teacher cuts at the secondary level to 14. And so then that would be the $3.9 million of the $4 million you're saying you're willing to give back. Scenario number 4, paraprofessional days, again, phasing the health insurance costs, also providing for the assistant principals. And right now we budget $900,000 for support staff incentives because tragically, you know, our challenge has been to try to increase teacher salaries for the past 5 years. And we've done a fantastic job. Dr. Warren really needs to be commended for the recommendations he's brought to y'all for supporting a very competitive salary. Surely, you know, all the school districts in our area aren't even close to paying what we're paying. But that's been a true challenge. Even at the rates we're paying, it's still very hard to recruit and to retain staff. So we've essentially gone from about a $43,000 salary when Dr. Warren arrived to $49,050 entry salary. So we're very competitive in trying to attract teachers to Midland. So utilizing you know, the support staff and unfortunately not being able to increase those salaries as we would like to, like we have for the professionals, we've maintained that $1,000 per year for each custodian, child nutrition worker, teacher assistant. We've provided that $1,000 per year, $500 at Christmas and $500 at the end of the year for a retention incentive. In this scenario, that maintains $500 instead of dropping it dropping it completely off. That puts back a $500 incentive rather than zero. And then again, the secondary teachers would be the $1.2 million. And then the last case scenario is also the paraprofessional days. Again, a sliding insurance scale, what that would cost, as well as the assistant principals, the incentive, and then the teachers again. So those are the 4 priority options that Teaching and Learning brought to you with how they would utilize an additional $4 million in savings, or in utilization of either fund balance or tax rate.
If we only made budget cuts of 8.6 rather than 12.3, this is how they would propose to utilize the $4 million approximately in less cuts.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
I'm understanding this because financially I understand those numbers, but this may be oversimplistic. This may be more for Patrick, but in order to get the 1.6 million and the full 2.5 million in cuts that we were talking about on the $12 million cut version, to get 2.5 million out of that proposal, you'd be cutting 26 staff, but the impact of that is going from 19 to 1 student teacher ratio to 20.5 to 1. So it's going to impact the whole campus. Right. Okay. That's average, so, okay. So that's that's deceiving. That makes it look like, okay, 1.5 kids is no big deal, let's move on down the road, but it really is when you look at it campus-wise.
Well,
Okay.
it is in particular because you take out special ed classes, you take out special program classes when you're trying to balance those out. So you could see a potential of, a non-core academic class, going from
30, 35.
Yeah, 30 to 35.
This is what they would do with it. So they don't really, do they want that one, or if they?
No, not necessarily. That was what you asked for.
Right, that's why I began my question.
Okay. 5-year plan?
What else we got?
Now you want to go to the 5-year
Forecast.
forecast. You've seen these schedules since 2003. I think everybody's pretty familiar with the way I try to forecast out going out 5 years and looking at revenue versus appropriations. We did see these numbers significantly different than what you saw at the last budget workshop that we did, because our tax values essentially went from a 17.06 billion to 18.07 billion. So we saw essentially about $1 billion increase in values from the April 30th estimate until just as recently as today. The difference is about $100 million in taxable assessed values. I just got off the phone with Jerry Bundick right before the board meeting. Mm-hmm. These values are actually calculated on a May 4th adjustment that he sent to me, and I just wanted to see if we'd varied much since May 12th till today, and we're looking at about $100 million more in taxable assessed values, which is, it's a lot of money, but it's negligible when you're talking about at the tax collection rate and based on per $100 valuation. And the reason that's negligible is because we were being propped up because we were at about 11% loss at the April 30th, and we were receiving additional state aid for tax reduction with that loss. As we gain in values, we start to lose money in state aid for additional state aid tax reduction because our values are getting better. Until you get to the 4% level, which you get nothing from the state in additional state aid for tax reduction, because that's built in with the statutory provision for those rapid decline school districts, which is in statute, but unfortunately is not funded. So even though we're going to suffer a 4% loss, even though statute says TEA can give us more money, they can't because the legislature didn't fund that provision of the law. So we're essentially on our own for anything from 0 to 4% loss. And so even though we did gain $1 billion in additional tax assessed values, it didn't amount to any additional revenue gain for us in total. So if you look at 2016-17, again, we're still looking right now at about a 6% value loss, pretty much flat student enrollment for 16-17 is what we budgeted for. So total revenues, estimated revenues, $234 million.
You're on $1.17 now.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let's get back to $1.04.
Yeah, start with $1.04.
Okay, let's get back to $1.04. Okay, so now we're at $1.04, and so our total revenues are $210 million. Total appropriations $235. These are all the cuts that are in our recommended scenario for the
12.3 number.
12.3 million. And I highlighted the instructional technology coaches because none of those were included in the TNL recommendations. I just left those status quo. So that gets you to, again, your deficit of $13,341,000. That's the number we were looking at the original outset. So allowing the use of the $3 million gets your net deficit down to $10.3 million. So you're still at a fund balance of $30 million if you're at $1.04. And as you go into next year and you anticipate, I've looked at the future values that currently are being posted in the oil industry, just different standard scenarios, looking at future values going out for the next 5 years. Seeing a 5% growth in additional property tax values as a result of the addition to our mineral values, that would take your total revenue up to $215 million for the 17-18 school year, and not adding back any of the cuts, not providing for any inflation, not providing for any pay raises in 17-18, and just adding $1.5 million because you've grown 2% in student enrollment is what I'm projecting with 5% growth in our mineral values. Then we would have additional resources of $3.1 million.
And team, that's what's significant about this, the scenarios that David has laid out for you on the 5-year forecast. You know, the first page was $1.04, the second page is $1.06, and then he did the last one for $1.17. But on the $1.04 forecast, we never recover the $12.3 million, not even in year 2021. So we will never get back to the staffing patterns that we were able to fund this year at $1.04. David, go to the $1.06.
Go to the $1.06.
It takes to year.
And that you say that because if you look at the the excess number, none of those numbers ever exceed $12 million.
$12 million.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
And then David's analysis of the $1.06, which, you know, $1.06 is the end of your golden penny. So it will be recaptured less at the very least amount that we can be, but you're still in year 4, 2019, 2020, before we could generate enough to recover from the cuts that we're having to make for next year's budget.
Best you could do is maybe pay raises during that time frame to eat up a little bit of that gain.
pay-
but you would
pay
never get the
raises to-
staffing back,
right.
like you're saying. That's
Yeah.
the key.
Right.
You can't get the staffing back, but those that are still here, you might be able to give a
You
little bit of a
might
pay
could do
raise.
that. That would hopefully, if
still
we
tight.
end up having to pass on insurance costs to staff, that could hopefully eat into that of what they would
Offset.
be doing that. And then your $1.17 analysis is the one immediately we can turn around and not only recover, provide assistance to staff, but also to alleviate David's receding hairline, be able to put more in fund balance.
Yeah, but also at that $1.17, you're going to maintain fund balance, and not just for the sake of maintaining it, but also that credit rating issue, because we've got to deal with the secondary facilities issue on the backside of this.
Correct.
And we've got to maintain a focus on that credit rating, because it's going to kill any secondary facility. If this community would support going to $1.17, and then in year 2 or 3, be able to support a secondary facility for a new Midland High, we've got to have that.
Well, you do, just because it's operational costs, as you add campuses, just like as we saw with the 3. We had to have 3 new elementary schools, but the operational costs increase for you when you do that. I sent you an article last week, or a couple weeks ago. Frisco ISD is one of those districts we use as an example of a community who wants to maintain their smaller educational settings. Well, now they are going to a TRE of $1.17, and they are approving more than 300 class size waivers every year because they are struggling to maintain that philosophy.
Wow.
Okay.
And so essentially, each 1% salary increase cost $1.5 million. So even at a 2%, if you were looking at the $1.04, with 5% growth in the next year, you wouldn't be adding back anything, but the most you could possibly provide would be a 2% salary increase and stay within that without funding any other inflationary items, and, you know, that's just not feasible.
Are you saying that $1.04?
At $1.04.
Gotcha.
In 17, 18.
Yeah.
A 2% salary increase for staff would eat up that 3.1 million. So you
3.1.
wouldn't be adding anything back to fund balance that year if you were to do that. And a 2% salary increase for teachers is basically about $1,000.
It's a
When do you
push.
get your next updated taxable value estimate?
Just did today.
What?
I did today.
I know, when's the next one?
The last official one is July the 29th. That's the one that'll be certified. He gives them to me as I call him and ask him, and he just actually had just received. The big one for us is it's an outsource valuation for our minerals and also for our industrial personal property. Those that are provided through Pritchard and Abbott, so they're not, those aren't values that are assessed by our own appraisers here in Midland. So those are the uncertain ones typically, and he just received his latest yesterday from Pritchard and Abbott.
When, do you know when the next one of those, will it not be until July 25th that he gets another one of
We'll
those?
probably get another one early part of July, maybe right after the 4th of July. And then the last one, the certified values will be the 29th.
Okay.
Okay? So the last thing I've
Yep.
got for you tonight is the TRE impact. And so on a $100,000 home, you see the tax rate going down the left column there, the assessed value, and then the taxable value for the home of $65,000. So the tax on a $100,000 home at $1.04 is $676 per year. If you increase it a penny, essentially, that tax increase is on an annual basis is $6.50. 54 cents on a monthly impact, and then based on a 365-day year, it's 2 cents per day. The next one is $1.06, and I cap it at $1.06. I don't go $1.06.005 because then we would be thrown into the next tier of recapture. So you would never want to go $1.06.005, you just stayed $1.06. And then those tax values all the way to the absolute cap of $1.17. And so on a $100,000 home, the total increase would be annually would be $84, monthly impact of $7, and a daily impact of 23 cents.
Is it did I read that is it the average home or the median home? Is it 221?
The average monthly, the average residence is at 251,000.
251.
Yes, sir. I believe that's right.
To put it in perspective, I looked at this today, and for our committee members, Jay and Tommy and Rick, I will certify that these numbers are correct because David calculated them, I didn't.
Inside joke.
Yeah. But for our home, if the board decided to do a $1.17 all the way to the max for our home, that would mean and that would just be for one boomer meal at Rosa's a month, that we would have to reduce our expenditures. So,
yes. So this takes you from 100,000 all the way up to $1 million, and $1 million valuation. The annual increase would be 1,137, a monthly increase of $94, and a daily increase of $3.12. So you have all those numbers in between 100,000 to $1 million at $1.04 to $1.17.
Do you, other than the perhaps additional updating of the taxable value estimate from the appraisal office or their service they use, do you reasonably anticipate any other additional information that might change what you've presented to us tonight?
Not really. Your two significant revenue sources are state aid, and now that the Supreme Court has ruled, we're not going to see anything with respect to that, any mandated change. And then, so the last piece is the taxable assessed values, and I believe we're getting pretty firm. The difference between May the 12th, like I said, and today was $100 million to the good. But even as we get closer to that 4%, it actually decreases the amount of revenue that we can generate. Even though we're improving, we're actually losing revenue because of the penalty of losing the additional state aid.
So as I understand it then, Dr. Warren, we've gotten, but for the update on the taxable value, we've gotten the information, and now one of the action items would be to schedule another workshop to...
The guidance that we need from you guys tonight, we have 3 board meetings remaining, regularly scheduled board meetings remaining in the summer. We have the July the 25th. We'll have our regular board meeting in August, and then we will have our second board meeting at the end of August to adopt the tax rate and the budget. So here's the guidance that we need from you guys tonight. Number one is I would see us having the need to have at least a couple of 3 more committee meetings, finance committee meetings between now and adoption, if not a full board meeting if you saw fit to do that. That's completely up to you. We'll make it happen. My question tonight is, number one is, are you ready to give us guidance that you are ready to say yes to seek a TRE to go forth to the public, or do you need more information, more analysis on our situation? That's number one. If your answer is yes, we are ready to announce that we're going to seek a TRE, then the process will be between the Finance Committee, administration, what actual penny do we need to land on to do that, and what information do we need to bring back to the full board for you to be able to decide on the penny amount.
What would change between now and August? Because you'd have to announce it in August for November, right?
The only possible change that David just explained is if there's going to be any change, it'll be between whatever the appraisal district has right now and when they certify it at the end. And David just doesn't think, and we don't think that there's going to be minimal change.
It'll be negligible, even if it changed $1 billion, and that meant 100 million and it's negligible, just as what you got today, there's not gonna be that big of a change between now and August.
Right. The only thing that could possibly, that would be impactful is if we went up essentially $2 billion, and that can't.
That ain't gonna happen. I'd be shocked if it did, unless he had a boo-boo somewhere.
Somebody had some significant miscalculation and found it, and I don't see that really as a possibility.
Let me make sure that I do not make the same mistake I've made in the following years. I would recommend that you seek a TRE this year, that we seek a TRE this year. I mean, with the $12 million of cuts that we're going to have to make, this next budget cycle, we will be up to about 100 and probably 35 to 140 million of lost revenue that has exited our district because of recapture. I think we're about 95 this year, and it'll be around the 45 to 50 million dollar range. So that's what we're going to be up to. With the cuts that we're going to have to make, the 12. I think David did a great job of showing you we can't reduce the 12, but we definitely can't go above the 12 either. That would be too much. Instructionally, that would be too much. So I would recommend, and if you need more information, I absolutely will bring you every bit of information. But the information on the decision for the TRE, I think it's in there.
There's no doubt that a TRE is going to be required.
Absolutely.
Question is whether we're going to have to find a happy median.
Okay.
I can tell you, in my opinion, I don't see any reason not to go after $1.17. I think that's a given, and we need to frame up that story so that the MRT can sell it. We need to have our town hall meetings, and we need to explain why we're in this position, that we've been extra conservative as a board in the history. We've got a state legislature that are just wrong to deal with, and they put us in this boat, and we've got to be prudent about maintaining our fund balance, maintaining our credit rating, maintaining as many staff as we can, and being able to re-implement that staff quickly.
Right.
And the only way to do that is at the $1.17, and to do it now. And I guess we have to, in order to call that TRE in November, we have to do it in August, right?
We would,
What's the timing of that?
you would adopt, we have decided early on that we were going to wait until July to the certified rates to make any decisions. That means it puts you into regular adoption cycle on, I believe it's the 22nd, David, Leah? 22nd?
I believe that's the right.
Of August?
Monday, the 22nd of August would be the meeting where you would adopt, and let's just first say, if you would adopt the budget that David prepares, and then adopt the tax rate that would fund it. And then if it's over the $1.04, it would automatically, with Leah's, have to file all the paperwork, but it would automatically put you in a November election cycle.
I agree with Jay. I don't see any choice but to call a TRE. It would be irresponsible to the students in MISD and to their education were we not to get some more money.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree on the necessity of a TRE election. I'm not yet quite to the point where I believe that $1.17 is the number. What I would suggest, however, is that we have an additional budget workshop to discuss that issue and hopefully reach a decision sooner rather than later. I would hate to wait until, if the consensus is we do need a TRE and all we're really wondering is how much we're going to approve. Don't want to wait till August to make that decision. I want to, I mean, tonight, I guess, if we continue to go down the line and vote, not vote, but to express the necessity of a need for a TRE, I think it's that news will be out. But in terms of the specifics, I would hate to wait until August to provide the specifics.
Yeah, that's a great point. Would you guys rather do this as a full board through that budget workshop, or would you rather have a committee first, or the full board? Okay. I would recommend we do this before we get out of here for the July break. Have another meeting, just as Rick just said, to do it before and after, but,
Well, we still haven't heard, I agree, but I would like to hear from Tommy and Angel and James to make sure we have at least 4 on the same page. How about the necessity of a TRE, seeking a TRE? Okay. James?
I know we have to do it. We have no choice.
Okay. All right, with that then, let's get our calendars out and see if we can meet later this month to perhaps, with a goal of perhaps finalizing what the exact amount.
I mean, David may disagree with me on that. Would you rather do it closer to the certification date, or would you rather do it?
I think as long as we can do it probably the last week of June, or either that or come back the first week after the 4th of July week, I think would be the 2 optimum points. I'll continue to try to get any updates from the appraisal district.
Well, if we did something on the 27th,
The only reason I'd like to do it earlier, because there are some staff members that are significantly concerned, particularly about the health insurance cost, especially our support staff. We've got some support staff that make, $12,000 a year. Obviously we can't assess them $100 per month health insurance costs on top of that, so it'll be a phased in by, 0 to 20,000 will pay so much, 20 to 40 will pay a different level, and then anybody over 40 will pay the higher level. But we've got to come to those decisions as far as what we're going to ultimately assess for our health insurance costs, and also looking at a salary schedule, because for the first time in the 27 years of school business that I've been at Midland ISD, this is the absolute only year that we will not be.
So when you say sooner, are you saying this month or shortly after 4th of July?
I would say is if we can do it the last week of June, that would be great.
Until the 27th?
Yes, sir.
I'd say the last week of June.
is that going to give you enough, are you going to have additional information to provide on the 27th? I mean, 2 weeks from now?
Whatever else I get from the appraisal district, and then also any guidance, any other additional guidance that you would provide.
But you think the appraisal district's not going to have anything till the 25th of July?
Well, that's when they absolutely have to certify their values.
They have to have it by
That's
then.
the final. And you
Well, I'm
really-
good on the 27th if everybody else is.
Okay.
Yeah,
James?
I'm fine on the 27th. I guess my question is this, is that, in terms of educational campaign, if you will, I don't think there's much difference between June 27th and July 7th, just to pick a number.
Right. Because
the 4th of July is a, dead period in terms of educational or organization or anything else. But if if June 27th helps you on your staffing reason, then I'm all for June 27th.
I think it would go a long way in us trying to get some answers out for staff as to what those health insurance costs are.
Yeah, that's a good date.
Okay.
All right.
5:30 in here.
Now, there's just one other thing that I would want to know in terms of speculation, guesstimation, or whatever. I'm concerned about how these cuts are going to impact our academic progress. We've got several scenarios going at the same time. We've got this and Educate Midland. And my second concern is how will this current situation impact the outcome or potential outcome of Educate Midland? I'm having some difficulty visualizing where we're going to be academically given all these cuts.
There's no doubt, the impact in instruction, particularly, if you're reducing the FTE counts at the secondary level. I think the secondary level is the one that's most, has the greatest impact. We're providing additional support through Title I with some set-aside resources to shore up these focus and priority schools, and then also these turnaround plans. So there's significant amount of resources that's being added to the elementary campuses. That goes without saying, because the number of teacher cuts are minimal at the elementary level compared to the high school level, secondary, where you've got the EOCs. I mean, that's one that's going to have the greatest impact.
I would attempt to answer your question this way, James, and that would be that, like us, those supportive of the Educate Midland effort would like not to see any budget cuts. However, for the reasons we just went over, even with a tax rate increase approved by the voters, cuts will be necessary. And so we will need the Educate Midland supporters even more going forward with these budget cuts than even before the budget cuts occurred.
Well, that still begs the question, how will that impact Educate Midland down the road? Because their basic assignment has been to speak to the issue of coming up with ideas and/or concepts that will contribute to improving secondary performance. And I'm concerned about how what we do now will impact that process, or the outcome of that process.
Well, I think it will have an impact, no doubt about it, if you start cutting staff. But one of the fundamental issues that Educate Midland group had was to not go after INS dollars, but to go after M&O dollars. You may have to worry about what you ask for, because that's what we're dealing with right now. But I think we ought to have a concerted effort to have as many people from that Educate Midland group here on the 27th. Dr. Warren, I'd make sure we have them, every single one of them invited.
We definitely can put out the invitation, because it's a good group.
We need every single one of them to understand it, because that's going to be part of the group that will market this.
Leah, if you'll remind me tomorrow, we'll send out an invitation tomorrow.
And just so everybody knows that we're on the same page, there was Dr. Warren presented, the information, not as detailed and up to date as this, but in terms of the likely need for your TRE, that was presented 2 months ago, at least 2 months ago, at our leadership committee meeting. So it won't be, no one will be surprised. They're all been wondering about, what our decision was going to be, and hopefully we can make it on June 27th.
Well, I think I would submit to you that it's probably going to change the course of what this group is doing right now.
Well, I hope not, James. I hope, like I said, I hope that we'll need them more than ever with the budget cuts that will be.
I'm not saying we won't need them. I'm simply saying that it's going to impact the direction in which they might go.
Well, I hope not. I guess time will tell. All right.
That city council and county commissioners be included on that 27th meeting.
Okay, we will send out the invites.
Mr. Davis and I have a partnership meeting on Thursday, I believe, so we will be able to
That'd be
discuss
good.
that with you.
Yeah, and as to those entities as well, as you know, just so everyone knows, they too have been informed of the likely TRE election. This will not come as a surprise to them either. All right, any other questions or comments, suggestions?
Good work, David.
Yes, thank you. All right, well, it is, I think, 8 p.m., and we will go into executive session to consult with the MISD attorney and discuss personnel issues pursuant to Section 551.071 and Section 551.074.
Team, you are dismissed. Thank you.
It's 8:49 p.m. and we are emerged from executive session and we are now adjourned. Thank you all for coming and thanks for staying.